Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Consumer Trends 2022 Roundtable. Thank you very much for joining us in this session. It's great to see you all here on this sunny day from Rotterdam. In our session today, we're with more than 200 people from 7 different countries, representing a big variety of brands, from big global players to local heroes, which shows again how many of you are eager to understand what is happening out there. And as important, what does this mean for you and your brand, and how you can use these trends to your advantage. You might have joined us in our previous European session, already read our booking, or joined us in one of our sessions this morning. I saw some. Welcome back. That would be great, but if not, do not worry. This roundtable is here to give you both an overview and a deeper understanding of what is happening in FMCG. Today, that is exactly what we have in mind for you. First of all, we want to show you what are the major consumer trends in Europe, and then we will show some inspiring examples how different FMCG brands are already activating these trends. But before we go further, let me introduce our team for you today. My name is Arjan Veniga, and I'm a Senior Business Director at Insights Consulting. And I have the privilege to work together with a great team of dedicated and creative researchers to empower brand builders just like you to shape the sustainable future of brands. Recently, I've been working for brands like G-Star Denim, Philips, and Heathrow Airport, and today I'll be your host and introduce you the overview of trends. After that, my dear colleagues Juby and Jeanette will take over and reveal some of the most interesting trends and brand examples for you. Juby is a research manager in Ghent and has been working in market research for more than 5 years. His passion lays with FMCG brands like Duvel, Moordgat, Ferrero, Spadel, and Danone. Then we have Jeanette. Jeanette works also from the Rotterdam office as a research manager, and she's working for both large European FMCG brands as well as for local Dutch hero brands like HelloFresh, Royal Canin, and Farm Fresh. But where does that leave you today? Well, you might be aware that Better Together is our tagline. So if you have any questions or comments, please share these in the chat. The more you do, the more we can help you. We also prepared some challenging questions and are really keen to read your views on these. At the end, we will have some time available to discuss the questions with you. Now we have introduced ourselves. Let's dive into what we're here for today. Just like last year, we explored and validated the key consumer trends that will define this year. We revealed these in our Culture and Trends Report 2022, which we gave the theme Rebound and Rebalance. And this definitely represents where my focus is in this upcoming year. And I guess this is probably not unfamiliar for you as well. Because, yeah, of course, let's talk about the pandemic. It hit us all, right? When it all started, our normal life stopped to some extent. And since then, we've been waiting to move along. We're all in this waiting game for the so-called new normal or back to normal. With the enduring pandemic reality, continuous outbursts of natural disasters and acts of social injustices, people started accepting the ongoing uncertainty by reclaiming their lives. For some, this meant pivoting things on a personal or professional level, for example, by moving houses, extending the family, or changing partners, or quitting their jobs. In fact, 2021 is also labeled as the Great Resignation. Between April and September, more than 24 million people were quitting their jobs in the US alone. And this was happening in Europe as well. Research showed that 46% of employees were planning to quit in the next 6 to 12 months, which eventually led to almost twice as many actual job leavers last year. And that showed us that people really started to change, some with life-changing decisions, while others focused on small tweaks and rituals, all to become happy again. Let's talk about happiness. It's the nature of our species, right? Humans want to be happy and will always adjust to the circumstances. So we did. We learned to live with the restrictions and as a result found new ways to make the best of it. Some adopted new hobbies. I started running. Working from home had its advantages after all, and we chose with whom we wanted to be. So it was a year where people tried to find a balance between the short term, like living in the moment, focusing on the now and embracing these small moments of joy, and the long term, We needed to plan for the future as a way to find stability and purpose again. And it's this duality, balancing of pleasure with purpose, that we seek to achieve happiness. Happiness is at the forefront of our culture and trend human drivers model, which is the core of our trends work. Positive psychology learned us that there are 7 universal drivers which we seek to satisfy in order to achieve happiness and well-being. You see them here in the screen, probably recognize in your own life as well. And while their core remains unchanged, the way this is manifested in our behavior is influenced by the world around us. Obviously, with a pandemic like COVID, like last year's, but just look around what is happening in and how you feel about Ukraine, and you will feel those drivers immediately, I guess. In our Trend Report 2021, we identified 3 key drivers. As you probably have experienced yourself, health, security, and relationships were at the forefront of our minds as we battled through the pandemic. In 2021, we will see definitely a change. With the pandemic hopefully fully gone and our newfound opportunities, it's time to focus on our new way forward. We learned what is important to us and started to reevaluate how we spend our time and energy in a world where uncertainty is the only given. So positive emotions and achievement are becoming stronger and will be the drivers for consumers this year. You might wonder how we came to these conclusions. Well, the starting point of our work was a qualitative exploration, and we did that with our Loom network of leading edge consumers around the globe. This led to the identification of 10 consumer trends for 2022. Here you see them all, from considered rituals to uncompromised values and 8 more colorful trends ready to go. Some are completely new, while others are evaluations of last year's trends. However, as market researchers, we not only want to understand which trends are manifesting around the world, but also how this happens, and, of course, what you could do with these, obviously. This is why, in collaboration with our field partner Dynata, we quantified these trends with over 15,000 consumers in 70 markets. And then, in this final stage of quantification, it enabled us to score the trends for each market or region, and therefore allows us to map these trends based on 2 parameters. First one is attitude, which reflects the extent people identify with a trend, and the second one is behavior, which reflects the extent people act upon it. As a result, you see 4 different quadrants, which is telling us where each trend is in its life cycle. Here you see all the trends in Europe mapped in these quadrants. Top left, we have establishing trends. Those have higher behavior and lower attitude, which means that these have generally been accepted as a normal part of life. In Europe, we only find one, and that's spontaneous play. Top right, in expanding, we have high behavior and high attitude, so these trends are really gaining momentum right now. So here we find, for example, the trend considered rituals and extending lifestyles. Bottom left, we find the nascent trends, trends that currently have low attitudinal and behavioral adoption, like redefining normal. Many of these trends represent more leading edge ways of thinking. So if you're looking to do something truly new in your category, these trends could be a great place to start. From my perspective, all of these trends are really interesting and could inspire you to grow your brand. But for time reasons, we can dive into all 10, obviously. So based on the trend mapping and our analysis, which trends are most interesting for you, we like to highlight these 4 trends. Juby, can I ask you to tell us a bit more about redefining normal?
Of course, Arjan. Thank you for giving over the word to me. As Arjan just mentioned, we will be looking into 4 trends today out of the 10 we identified last year. And I couldn't be more excited than to tell you about this first trend, as it's really one of my favorites amongst of the 10 we've identified this year. Redefining normal is playing on human drivers like relationship and meaning, as you can see in the top left of the slide. What is redefining normal all about? Well, let's get into it. Redefining normal is about how we are questioning things in our society that have always been presented to us as normal, as we are deepening our understanding of social justice. It's extremely relevant in this day and age, and we will be tuning into products and services that will reflect our true reality in the future. On these types of slides, we will be seeing how this trend plays out across Europe and what sectors it's mainly playing at. So allow me to briefly explain these type of slides, as we will be seeing it 4 times before we head over to some concrete examples per trend. On the left-hand side, you can see the quadrant that Arjan explained before, establishing and showing us what stage a trend is in. This can be establishing, expanding, nascent, or emerging. Then on the right-hand side, you can see the European trend score in the main population for Europe, but what's also interesting to look at, of course, is the next generation score in Europe. And then finally, you can see the sector playing field in which sectors this trend is manifesting itself the most and lesser so. So let's take a closer look at the redefining normal trend. We can see that this is a nascent trend and very much so in all of the countries we've included in this research. Although it's very important to look at the fact that for the UK and France, this is newly becoming an establishing or expanding trend. So it's definitely gaining in momentum. If we then take a look on the right-hand side of the slide, we can see the European trend score of 64%. But what's definitely even more interesting to look at is the score for the next generation. Here we can see a score of 74%, so this is extremely relevant for you in the future, as these next generation will be buying your future products in the future. And these are the ones that will be taking your norms and values of the redefining normal trend with them as they grow up. Finally, looking at the sector playing field, we can see that this trend manifests itself more in sectors like fashion, consumer electronics, and beauty and personal care, while lesser so in sectors like pharma, transport, and household products. Now we've prepared some concrete examples within the FMCG sector for you to give you some concrete background in how this trend is manifesting itself in your sector. And we will be looking at the first example coming from Unilever. Unilever has always been at the forefront of the redefining normal trend and was even working on this trend before we identified it was a trend, with their Empowering Women program through its Dove product. Now they've taken this trend to the next level and launched their recently Say No to Normal campaign. What is happening in this campaign is that they are banning the word normal from their packs and advertisements, quite literally putting this trend into practice. This saying no to normal makes part of their positive beauty program, and they are rolling this out across 100 countries and brands, including Axe, Sunsilk, and Dove. They aim to champion a new era of inclusivity and also gender equality through the products they're offering. And that's not even all. They also decided that they are no longer digitally altering a person's body shape, size, or skin tone in all of the ads they're doing, and also the ads of their influencers. Going over to the next example, also coming from a world-class famous brand, namely Starbucks. Starbucks is recently launching their What's Your Name campaign. The What's Your Name campaign revolves all around the fact that when you enter a store, and I'm sure you're aware of it, when you enter a store of Starbucks, the barista will ask for your name and write it on the cup and then call it out when the coffee is ready for you. This is part of the customer experience and is meant to create a bond between the barista and the person who is ordering the coffee. For me personally, I don't know if you've heard my name at the beginning, it's Shubi. It's really a horrible experience. They never pronounce my name right. They never write it on the cup right. So for me, it's not really working, but I can see the appeal for other customers. Specifically looking at this example, we are talking about the transgender people community, where people who are transgender don't identify with the name they are given anymore at birth. They choose their new name. Each time they're confronted with this when they're asked their name in places like, for example, Starbucks. That's why Starbucks wanted to raise awareness around this topic and generate inclusivity and acceptance of the personally chosen name of the transgender people so they feel safe and recognized at Starbucks stores. Going on to the next example, we are looking at an example from our Swedish friends at Oatly. But before I get into it, let's take a look at the commercial.
What have we here? Cow's milk. Really?
In this rather controversial commercial that was actually banned in the United Kingdom, we see that a dad is portrayed as an alcoholic, going to the store at night to buy cow's milk. Here we can see that Oatly is challenging or facing the traditional normal of drinking cow milk and going for plant-based milk with a rather unapologetic and controversial approach. Before we head over to the second trend that will be presented by my colleague Jeanette today, we will also present you with a statement as we go over to the next slide. Here you can see the statement that you can answer upon in the polls in the section. Brands should be taking the lead and challenging society's norms. Do you agree or do you disagree? Let us know through the poll in the chat, and then I give the word to my colleague Jeanette.
Yes, thanks a lot, Yui, and thank you for taking us through this first trend. I have the pleasure to take you to the next trend, and this is actually a trend that has evolved from a trend that we also had in the last report. Let me start by giving you a little bit of background. So one of the things that happened during the COVID pandemic was that instead of distracting us from all the other things that were going on in the world, it actually worked as a magnifying glass. We saw all the weaknesses in our system being enlarged. And I think the most obvious one is, of course, the struggles that we have in our healthcare system. But we also saw the Black Lives Matter movement enlarging the racial inequalities, or also the global warming topic. And these big topics, they will, of course, make us feel very overwhelmed. We don't know where to start to really make it personal change, but we do want to shout out and stand up against it to enforce a change. And last year, this trend was called Unapologetic Activism, meaning that consumers stand up and say, I want and demand a change here. This year, we've gone more into action mode, and that's also where the driver achievement comes in. Consumers don't only want to call out the injustices, but they also want to make a difference. But of course, for an individual, it's really hard to contribute to the big topics in society. And therefore, we will support solutions from brands that will empower us as consumers to really make a change. So let's have a look where we are with this trend. We see that the Action for Impact trend is a trend where the European markets are a little bit ahead of the pack. However, it's only just an expanding trend in Europe. Then looking at the generations, this is a topic that is playing in both next-gen consumers, but also in other generations. So it is something that is seen throughout the entire society. Then looking at the sectors, actually FMCG has a very important role to play here, which is quite logical because with the groceries we buy every day, making changes here can have a big impact on the world. Next, we also, of course, see it coming back in energy and utilities, as well as in fashion. And the link with fashion is quite interesting. We also see that coming back in other trends. But let's start with the first example, which is coming from the koffiejongens. The koffiejongens is Dutch for the coffee guys. And for me, the action for impact that I would think of when I see this brand is around sustainability, because the koffiejongens is known for making biodegradable Nespresso cups, addressing the topic of the waste stream created by these cups. But the koffiejongens are addressing a different topic here, and they are addressing the wage gap between males and female. They noticed that in their own hiring process, women were already asking for a lower wage compared to their male counterparts for exactly the same role. So they, of course, closed the wage gap within their own company, but they wanted to do more. And then they came up with this very playful campaign where they ask men to pay 14% more for the same coffee cups compared to females. And this 14% is reflecting the average wage gap that we see in the Netherlands. Of course, this pay increase is completely voluntary, but with the money that they raised through this campaign, they supported Project Fearless, which is helping young girls to become more confident and to also break the gender stereotypes that we have in our society. Then the second example is from a brand I personally love. Tony Chocolonely. And yeah, Tony's is, of course, already a very activist brand with their core battle that they fight around modern slavery in the cocoa industry. However, the philosophy of Tony's is that as a do-good brand, you shouldn't just fight one battle, but you should be good all round. It should be a holistic approach. And with their recent I'm Bad for Your Health campaign, they're actually focusing on the battle around health and having a healthy diet. Because all of you will probably know that a bar of Tony's a day is definitely not part of a healthy diet. Not sure how many people of you know the amount of calories that will be in one bar of Tony's and how that is related to the average caloric intake a person should have. If you know, let me know in the chat. If not, look it up after this session and you'll probably be shocked. But the point is, many consumers don't know either. The amount of people that will check the back of pack and see the label of the product is very low. And therefore, Tony's wants to raise awareness for this. And they want to push a broad sugar tax in the Netherlands to make products that contain a high amount of sugar more expensive. But also they already took action themselves proactively and adapted their wrapper to make consumers aware that this is not a healthy product. And what's really interesting here is that with this I'm Bad for Your Health campaign, Tony's is not aiming to sell more chocolates. Actually, they're probably selling less chocolate because of this increased awareness. But that's the thing about doing good. It's not about creating more business. And that's exactly where my statement is coming from, where I would like to get your ideas. So yeah, doing good may not always be beneficial to your company. It may not directly benefit your company, but it can also have a negative impact on your company. And I'm curious to hear from you guys. When it comes to actions to make impact, should you do it even when it has a negative impact on your business results? So let us know in the poll, and then head back to Julie for trend number 3 already.
Yes, thank you, Jeanette. We're already down to our third trend. We hope you're still inspired and interested by all we've presented already today. And let's now get ahead into the third trend called considered rituals. As you can see once again on the top left of the slide, this one is driving on human drivers' achievement and health. What is considered rituals all about? Considered rituals is working around the fact that as a human being or an individual, we are constantly pressured into be the best version of ourselves. Be it the perfect son, the perfect brother, the perfect employee, pressure comes from everywhere. I'm sure while I'm telling this, some of you might recognize what I'm talking about. Luckily, this type of trend has been dying down in recent years, although it's very much still present, this pressure. However, we believe in coming years people will still strive to meet their goals and what they want to achieve, but will do so in a way that fits with their own cycles, moods, and rhythms. An example in my personal atmosphere is a friend of mine at the age of 35 who decided to quit her job and then studied something totally different and then started a new job in that path at the age of 35. So that shows that you can do whenever you want to do it. Looking at how this trend plays out across the countries that we've included in this research, we can see that considered rituals is very much an expanding trend in the upper right quadrant, and specifically so in countries like Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany. Looking at the trend score for Europe, there's virtually no difference between the generations, scores amounting to 85 and 86%, meaning that this trend is omnipresent across all the generations. And then again, here's where it gets interesting for you. FMCG is already playing a big role into this considered rituals trend, followed by fashion and financial services, while lesser so in categories like automotive, transport, and energy. Now we will be heading to some concrete examples again about how this trend manifests itself in the FMCG sector. And the first one really won't come as a surprise, as the name of the brand is actually in the name of our trend, so we had to include it. Rituals is working on the personal rituals you can experience as a customer and are fitting with products that you want or to find that are best fitting about your rhythm, your cycles, and your moods. Recently, as you can see on the right-hand slide, left of the site, you can see that they recently launched a flagship store in Amsterdam where it's all about finding your personal ritual and then getting the product that fits best with that ritual. Then we move over to a brand that I actually didn't know prior to this research called Kahlua. It's a brand from Pernod Ricard, and I suggest we take a look at the video before I explain more. This example is about the Stir Up campaign that they recently launched. As all of you might be aware of, in January, typically some people or consumers involve in what they call a dry January. Dry January means that you're not drinking alcohol for 1 month. Of course, this being an alcoholic brand, this is a very negative evolution for your brand if people aren't drinking alcohol for 1 month in 12 months of a year. So Kahlua decided to give a little spin on this dry January and decided to opt for a break of technology, meaning that couples could participate in this contest and could win a cash prize of $25,000 if they would stay off their phone for 30 consecutive nights in January between 6:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. This is coming from the fact that an increasing number of consumers is uneasy and worried about the amount of time they're spending on their phone. And Kahlua wanted couples to reconnect again by disconnecting from their phones. Moving on to the last example, and this is one of the favorite examples we have included in this research, and it's actually coming from our Dutch friends. So thank you, Arjan and Jeanette, for this example. Jumbo is a supermarket chain, and they recently launched a kletskassa concept around 200 of their stores in the Netherlands. Kletskassa is really a Dutch Belgian word. I don't know the literal translation for it, but quite translated into English freely would mean chat checkout, which is, by the way, a real tongue twister. At this checkout, or the chat checkout or kletskassa, people are making time to have a friendly chat with their customers. The stores are trained to spot signs of loneliness and then combat those with local initiatives at their cachets. People or customers in the store can themselves choose whether they want to go for a friendly chat or want to go for a quick checkout. It's really in hands of the customers. Jumbo recognizes that people are social human beings and that offers their customers the possibility to choose the type of experience they want. They really took the time as a brand to think, what is my brand driving and what do they need as basic human factors, and then decided to build the kletskassa around it. A great example, if you ask me. And this brings me to the next statement. Brands should focus on getting to know what basic needs and rituals their consumers can fulfill with their products. Do you agree or do you disagree? Let us know in the poll and the chat. And then I give the word to Jeanette again with the fourth trend for today.
Yes, it's already time for the last one. And this final trend has a very strong link to sustainability. Because the trend extending life, it's all about the recognition that constantly buying new stuff, even if we marketeers say it's the greener alternative, isn't sustainable in the long run. We're depleting our resources, we're creating this endless stream of waste. And I, for one, have already noticed that nowadays, more and more, I question, do I really need this new pair of jeans, or can I perfectly go with the dozen I already have in my closet? Or when I see that something's broken, instead of directly buying something new, I think maybe I can repair it and do with this one just a little bit longer before buying something new. And what's really interesting here is that it's not just driven by the meaning of sustainability, wanting to do something that's good for the planet, but it's also about engagement for consumers, because consumers actually take pride when they are able to creatively expand the life of the products that they have. And they really feel good about doing this. So let's have a look at where we are with this trend. What's really nice to see is that the European countries are very much ahead of this trend. And we see that France, Belgium, and Germany are actually in the lead here. With a trend score that is high across all generations, this is something that's playing as in society as a whole. We do see then, looking at the sectors, that this is something that is very much linked to consumer electronics, fashion, but also to home improvement and gardening. And we do not see FMCG coming back here directly. However, we found some really inspiring examples of FMCG brands that managed to really leverage this trend. Let's have a look at the first example. So,
Vanish has always been.
Oh, sorry, it's already started. This is an example coming from Reckitt, brand Vanish. And they made this really nice video. And I think the video explains exactly what they do. So I'm not going to give you a long a background about it. Let's just have a look together.
In there to make little problems vanish. But now they're taking on a bigger one. Too many of our clothes are worn just 10 times before they're thrown away and replaced, creating over 90 million tons of waste. But by taking care of the clothes we love for longer, removing stains and protecting colors, we can all waste less and we wear more. See, Vanish is still helping problems disappear. Just bigger, more important ones.
So through this campaign, they're addressing this very big sustainability topic with their simple stain remover Vanish. And what I really love about their message is that they actually say to consumers, hey, you've got this small problem, you've got a stain in your clothes, and we have this product to help you. And with that, we empower you to basically contribute to this bigger problem in life. And that makes me feel empowered as a consumer that I can make a difference here.
Vanish.
Yes, on to the next one. The next one is coming from Ferrero. And when you start thinking about all the waste that we create with the products that we buy from the packaging material, I, for one, am always astonished by how quickly my garbage bin fills up with packaging material. And that makes me think, what if I can reuse this packaging and use it for other things instead of throwing it away once I've eaten all the chocolates? And that's exactly what Ferrero taught with their Upstyle Your Box campaign. So what they did is that they created this initiative to stimulate consumers to not throw away this box once you've eaten all the chocolates, but to reuse it and give it a second life. So maybe it can be a phone holder, maybe it can be a jewelry box, or what about a flower pot? The opportunities are very going in all directions. And to stimulate consumers to do this, they came up with these stylish stickers, and they launched this platform where consumers can share all the things that they've created for themselves to also inspire other consumers. And this Upstyle Your Box campaign is part of their bigger mission to make 100% of all the packaging from their products either reusable, recyclable, or compostable by 2025. And Ferrero Rocher actually benefited from the extending life trend, the consumer trend, to make their business mission work in the end. Then the last example I have on extending life is coming from Sweden. There, the Karlstad-based coffee roaster Löfbergs found that in their production process, there was a lot of waste. Think about printing errors on the packaging, or barcodes that were scrunched up, or coffee bags that were not filled to the minimum requirements. And what happened with this coffee is that it was just all thrown away and it was never making it out of the factory into the supermarkets, which is of course a big pity. So instead of ending the life of the products, they thought, how can we give these products a second life? And then they invented this brand, and excuse my Swedish, it's not that good, but they called it a Reddet Café, which is rescued coffee. And they were selling this coffee at Circle K gas stations all around Sweden. This way they're serving 11 million cups of coffee a year, coffee which otherwise would have been ended up in the garbage bin. And the extra challenge that they have here is that because this is coming from different waste streams, the blend of the coffee will change from batch to batch. And that means that they cannot guarantee to Circle K that their coffee will always be of a certain quality level. So that also means that Circle K has to put trust in Löfbergs here, that the coffee will always be tasty and delicious for the consumers buying it. So that leads me to the final challenge for today. We saw that there were two companies here dealing with waste in a different way. On the one hand, we had Ferrero, who basically gave the responsibility back to the consumer to reduce the waste. And on the other hand, there was Löfbergs, who took it in their own hands and reduced waste and created waste into a newly consumable product. And of course, I realized that in the end, reducing waste is an issue that is a joint effort. But if I put this one very black and white, who do you think is responsible for reducing waste? Should it be the consumer, or should it be us as companies making sure that there's just not too much waste to start with? Some food for thought. Think about it and let us know in the poll what you think.
All right, Jeanette, I now realize that 2 of your examples are about chocolate, so you must really be a chocolate fan. We've highlighted today 4 out of the 10 trends, of course, and for timings, we aren't going into the 6 other ones, but we hope we've inspired, better to say, your curiosity and your interest into what we've talked about today. We know that on a day-to-day basis, you are required to specific questions, specific answers from your stakeholders internally, and that inspiration and trends like these are often put away quickly. But we hope we have provided you with enough inspiration and trends to think about this and turn these opportunities into new ideas for you specifically and your brand. As with all we do, our trends start with people. It brings an outside-in perspective into the world and is meant to be closing the gap between what you're thinking is the experience and the actual experience of your end consumer. We hope that with this trend work, we can inspire you and that you can take this to the next challenge and are better prepared for your brand in the future.
So how to do that? Well, let's first take a look at our mission at Insights. Our motto is better together. We believe that coming to good solutions means that you need to work together with the right people, with the right consumers, and develop solutions together. And that when it comes to activating the trend, that is also the case. And that means that before actually doing anything, it's important to first of all understand how the trend is impacting your specific target audience and your specific category, because all the results we shared here are very true for the more generic customer profile. But when we drill it down a bit further and go into a very specific subgroup, things may be a little bit more nuanced. So make sure you really understand how this trend is working for your category. And then, of course, be sure that you really look at the fit between your brand and the trend. That because if the trend is not in line with the values of your brand, it may not be credible when you start to activate it, and it may actually have a negative impact on you. So make sure to check the fits. Then we believe it's important that when you start activating these trends and start to create solutions, that you work together with the right consumer to get these insights. And what the right consumer means really depends on the trend that you're working with. For instance, think about a very nascent trend that is not really widespread in general society. There, it wouldn't make sense to work with the average consumer who is more like a laggard and not aware at all of these trends. Then it's much more relevant to work together with more trend-savvy consumers who are also ahead of the pack and can really think along how you can bring this trend to a broader audience. And then finally, we believe it's important to be creative. You have to stand out from all the clutter that is already going on outside. So be creative and involve all your internal inspirators, but also think about bringing in some outside creativity. Think about working with people from other sectors, from other industries, to really create something that's really cutting edge and breaking through the clutter.